carpenter, you frame a house for those who need protection. Laborer, you lift a heavy burden for the weak. Leaders build a city that all children may rejoice in. May God's kingdom come, on earth His will be done.
Ephesians 4, verses 25 through 29 in the Christian Standard Bible. Therefore, putting away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor, because we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. Let the thief no longer steal. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands, so that he has something to share with anyone in need. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. In the book of Ephesians, St. Paul is explaining what it means to be the church. Before this pericope, Paul wrote that the church is to work together in all our different roles. Here, St. Paul insists that the church builds one another up in word and deeds, and he even ties this to our occupational lives as well. Uncle Jerry Kuntz, how do you think the way that we, the church, present ourselves in work might tie to this idea of building one another up?
Wow. Jumping in the deep end of the pool here, huh?
Always.
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities to build each other up, and we try to do that with our teammates at work. I don't know if everyone does, but I certainly try on a daily basis because, we all have problems, issues, downfalls. We have things that go wrong, and sometimes it gets frustrating, and sometimes it can get negative. And negativity is everyone likes to join around the water cooler and they jump in and the negativity grows. And we got to kind of stop that and put a positive spin and acknowledge that it is real. But at the end of the day, we got to keep moving because we got to feed our families, and we do that by keeping our jobs. And complaining doesn't help.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Hey guys, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast, doing again the Whole Church Job Fair. We're asking people about their daily lives. What do they do at work? And this can be a really fun episode. You might notice TJ Tiberius Juan Blackwell, the inventor of podcasts, is not here with me today. But I'm really excited. I have a very special guest, my uncle. Uncle Jerry Kuntz. Everyone is to call him Uncle. It's his first name. Just like, Phil Coulson's first name is Agent. His first name is, in fact, Uncle. Uncle Jerry, how's it going?
It's going real well, Josh. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, I am excited to have you on. This is your first time on the Whole Church Podcast, so it's kind of fun. It's fun because I feel like we've done this for years, and we're try not to just make it our family and friends and be real serious about it. And then we did this thing where we're talking about people's jobs, and we're now we're going to bring in all of our family and all of our friends. Yeah. TJ has family coming in. I'm going to have my brother and my sister-in-law on also. It's just we're just going to do it. We're just going to do it now. It's 5 years. If they're either with us or they're not at this point,
Exactly. And you got a big family, so you get a lot of different jobs to choose from.
It's true. And I'm excited for this too, because Uncle Jerry is my first, I can say this confident actually, my first interaction at all with the Catholic Church was getting to know Uncle Jerry. So we talk about ecumenical work or church unity. Yeah, that's a thing. Catholic Church and Protestants haven't always been best of friends, and I feel like we get along pretty well. So we could talk about
Yeah.
some of that while we're at it today. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Trying to remember how to do TJ's parts. I'm never good at it. Make sure you guys check out the other shows on the Anazal Podcast Network. It's the network we're a part of, so it has shows like Systematic Geekology, Kung Fu Pizza Party, My Seminary Life. So we've got a lot of fun stuff over there. So check that out. Also, feel free to rate and review our show on Podchaser or Good Pods or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or somewhere that'll get us attention, so that whenever people search things, that we might come up. Trick the algorithms into thinking we're important. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that said, Uncle Jerry, you might not know this, but there's a sacrament we do on this show. It's sacred form of unity that is silliness, actually.
Okay.
Because you can't not be united when you're being as silly as I like to be. And this is a weird one we're doing for this series. So on our Facebook group, we asked everybody like what the most talked about theological topics are at their church, so we could see whether or not it's relevant to people's lives. And for some reason, someone threw up there, is a hot dog a sandwich? And then a lot of other people voted for it. I'm like, well, I feel like we have to include it, but I don't know where to include it. So I was like, that's the silly question now. So,
Yeah.
Uncle Jerry, let us know. Impart your divine wisdom on us. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I'm going to say if it's on bread, it's a sandwich. It's got to be. I mean,
All right.
We just eat a bratwurst and be done with it.
I mean, bratwurst's a good option too. So
without bread, I can eat it on a stick.
Yeah, oh, man. So now we need another family get together. We can cook out.
That's right.
But in what ways, if any, do you think this question could possibly be relevant to your life? That a hot dog is, in fact, a sandwich.
Appreciate the heads up on that one, Josh. And
Yeah.
well, it's relevant for a lot of reasons, because the doctor told me to get more vegetables. So my wife, who is a great cook, she made hot dogs the other day, but she added chili and onions and cheese. In Cincinnati, they call that five-way, I think. Five-way would have spaghetti. If you got bread, you don't need spaghetti. But yeah,
Yeah.
part of a well-balanced meal.
Definitely. All right. Well, with that, the reason we're doing this series for those listening is because a lot of our listeners are pastors, theologians, people who attend seminary, other kind of church leaders, and we believe it's important that our church leaders hear more from people that are working in other occupations, who aren't just, in academia or in ministry, but who are in the real world, seeing what life is actually like. I think it's important that we hear from other people. So that's why we're doing this. I think it's been beneficial to me so far. Hopefully others are getting a lot out of it. Uncle Jerry, you're not only the first Catholic I ever knew, because I think I've known you literally since I was born or within that first year at some point. But you're also who I've kind of held up to comparing everything I heard. Growing up Pentecostal, and you go to like church camp or something, someone's always going to be like, well, Catholics say, or Catholics would do this. And I'm always like, Uncle Jerry's not like that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm always like, hold on, have y'all ever met a Catholic? But there's a lot of comparison and a lot of like, oh, well, they're like this. Could you maybe unpack a little bit like your history with the church for our listeners, and then maybe address some of these stereotypes that maybe you've run into concerning, the other side or anything like that? I know you kind of married into a Pentecostal family, which is pretty wildly different from the Catholic tradition. So, you unpack some of that for us maybe, and maybe dispel some of these rumors.
Gosh, it'll be 30 years. No, I'm sorry, it was 30 years. Actually, we met before your parents met, and we dated for a while, and they just got to the altar quicker than us. And so I've been part of this family for a long time, and I've carried you on my shoulders when you weighed a whole lot less.
Yeah.
About seventh grade, you got bigger than me, so I stopped all that silliness. But anyhow, so I grew up in a very isolated world, I guess, because the city I live in, has so many Catholics. In our grade school, we had our own football league. And
Mm,
we played 8 or 10 other Catholic teams. And
mm,
then I went to Louisville, Kentucky, and Louisville, Kentucky has even more Catholics than where I'm in Illinois.
yeah.
And there are dozens of really, really well respected Catholic high schools, boys, girls, co ed, all the rest, and grade schools and whatnot. And so I went to Catholic preschool, kindergarten, grade school, high school, and college. And University of Louisville was my first pagan institution. And it kind of blew my mind.
Mm,
People were asking me to join their church and the Hare Krishnas and all the different other Protestant religions. And I was really kind of blown away because in my Catholic world, no one ever asked me to join their church because I was already part.
mhm,
And proceeded for it went on. Went to church. Ran around my circle of my Catholic friends. We're even when I joined your family. Um, I went to one church, they went to another. I went to their mass. Brother Ledford was a fantastic preacher,
mhm,
and I really enjoyed his homilies. Were heartfelt and well researched. And in singing, who doesn't like to sing? Well, I like to sing. And really, where it kind of caught me was I took a job in a city in Western Kentucky, and one of my coworkers came in, and he would just quiz me every day. And he would say, we studied about the Catholic Church on our Wednesday night Sunday school, and you all do this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, and I'd never encountered anything like that. And I'm like, well, I went to Catholic schools for more than 16 years, and we never discussed
mhm,
any other religion. And the fact that they were getting together on Wednesday night Sunday school to talk about what the Catholics were doing wrong kind of blew me away. And
mhm,
in some respects, it made me start digging deeper into my faith and what we believe and why we believe so that I could defend my position until a priest told me, there's no point. Well, there may be no point in defending your position because most people don't want to know your position. They are just waiting for you to stop talking so they can tell you their preconceived notions. And you just take
mhm,
turns talking about why you're right. So if you come at it from what you really want to understand is what do you believe? Why do you believe it? What's right or wrong about it? That's a whole nother conversation. It's not some sort of ninja evangelical gotcha. It's hey, how can we grow closer to God? Because really, that's what this is all about. Is uh, actually, the goal is to get to heaven, right? So,
mhm.
how are we going to get to heaven? What do we have to do? And there's a lot of good things and a lot of good churches. And so, if
Yeah.
anything, I have learned not that I learned to be more acceptance and learn more acceptance of it, but in the Catholic Church, I know what to say, when to say it. I know all the songs. I know all the words.
Yeah.
Uh, I know the prayers. I know when to stand, when to sit. And when I went to my wife's church and actually even your parents' church, because they've lived in so many different cities, I've noticed that different cities, some are more vocal, some are more reserved,
Mhm,
and um, it kind of blew my mind
mhm,
because it's not the faith that I've been practicing. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's
yeah.
just different.
Yeah. Yeah. I found it really interesting when I started going to more high liturgical church. Just like I don't know the songs and stuff. I'm like I don't know what's going on. But
Mhm.
those kind of stuff I feel like aren't as big a deal. The stuff you're talking about though, like it's interesting. I really haven't heard it the other way around either. Where like I do hear a lot of Protestant churches who are like equipping people in case a Catholic, or if a Jehovah Witness comes to you, what should you say? Or a Mormon, or
Mhm.
insert here. And I think some of them have good points, understanding what you believe so you're ready if someone like talks to you. But a lot of it just does bother me because a lot of it is here's what they believe and here's how you get them. And
Yeah.
And even we actually interviewed a Mormon family on our show, and it was so interesting how many times people are like, "Here's what you need to ask them. This will really get them." I'm curious what they'll say about Jesus being God. They'll never have an answer for that. And when we ask them, and they're like, "Well, yeah, of course Jesus is God." And I'm like, "Well, they said you'd never have an answer for that, and you just said of course." And I was like, "Now what do I do?" And the fact that
So
like, oh, go ahead.
I had no, well, I didn't want to interject. One of my roommates in college was Mormon. And
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. I mean, humble Christian. He did everything right. He really did his best in everything he could do. His religious beliefs and mine were not in sync at all. But
yeah.
he was a great guy. Still is a great guy.
Yeah, yeah. I had someone on my floor in my dorm. It wasn't a roommate, but very, very similar situation. I think the thing that still blows my mind is every time we have someone who is of the Catholic tradition on our show, I'm inevitably in the next week, someone's going to be like, "Do they still do they call themselves Christians even?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they were the OG Christians. What do you what do you mean?"
Thank you.
It
Yes,
started it.
that's kind of how we see it, right? Yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, that's my thing. Like, there are differences of opinion, differences of belief still, but how you go about it, I think, makes a really big difference. On our other podcast, Systematic Ecology, we're doing a series called "Finding the Good," and we're like taking different things that we disagree on and actively trying to say, "What if I was the other side? How would I present this?" And I think that's probably more helpful than defending yourself against them. Just kind of like think like empathy. What do they believe? Why do they believe it? How are they, raised? Where are they coming from? Rather than here's what they believe and here are how I gonna ask a gotcha question. That
yeah.
stuff's just it's just silly, really. Like I don't know. To me, that's just not what Jesus was about. But anyway, I digress. I digress.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, since you married into the family, you kind of touched on it a little bit. How would you describe the way, for listeners, that you've navigated your faith in the family you married into tradition when it comes to stuff like weddings, kids' baptisms, the church you attend even? Like, how do you kind of navigate that?
Well, what we try to do is we try to. Um, my wife is such a good Christian. I'm never going to
Yeah.
pull her over the Catholic faith, and she's probably never going to pull me over. We're both kind of headstrong, and we both have our beliefs. But I go to her church a lot, and she comes to my church a lot, and she doesn't get as much out of mine, and I don't get as much out of hers. Of course, in her church, they're singing songs that are on the radio, pop Christian songs, and I don't know any of those songs. But when they have the words on the screen, I sing along because I like to sing, and I'm part of it. I really enjoy her preacher and his message, and a lot of that. Now, some things are really blowing my mind, and I don't mind bringing this up. Random people speaking in tongues in the middle of a service very loudly. We don't do that. Now, and I say that, but I'm from the Midwest. I'm from the Bible Belt, and we're conservative. By nature. I have family in Florida, and in their Catholic churches, they are more. They're more vocal.
Yeah.
But it's a different set of people. I mean, they've got international people. People come to Florida, right? And they live there, and it's great weather, and you can make a lot of money. Kentucky is, well, it was 20 degrees 2 days ago, and it's 60 degrees today, and it's going to be 100 degrees in August. And, we just trudge through our misery and and deal with the weather. So it's just a whole different world.
I mean, Kentucky is better during the summer than Florida, I would argue. Florida's unbearable in the summer.
Well, the one thing I got to say about Kentucky is our tap water comes out of the ground at 55 degrees. So you can pour a drink out of the sink and enjoy it. And in Florida, every time I visited, I pour tap water, and it's like, did you get this out of the swimming pool? I mean, what is this?
Yeah. And it's got sulfur in it. I don't know. All of Florida's water just tastes like sulfur. Anyway.
Yeah. Fountain of youth, right.
Yeah. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. And I'll say, for myself, because I'm curious your kind of perspective on this too. When I was still attending my parents' church. I kind of changed my beliefs before I stopped attending. Just because,
Mhm.
stuff I studied and learned and talking to different people. And it come to a part where like they would say stuff about the Bible or something. I'm like, it's not true. Or they'd be like, everyone always believes this. And I'm like, no, actually they don't. And, they start making points and I'm like, I don't agree with that. And
Yeah.
for me, it became really hard not to focus on those things, because like
Mhm.
my parents' pastor is great. He still says, and I'm still friends with him. There's still a lot of stuff that he says that I do agree with. But sometimes when you sit in a sermon like that, you're like, it's hard not to let go of the fact that you just said something like, Paul, whenever Paul's name got changed, it was because I'm like, Paul's name never changed. Hold up. It was Saul, whose name is also Paul. That's
Right.
actually just in the text. Like it says that. You just got to read
Yeah.
it. And it was really hard for me not to harp on stuff like that. Do you ever have that issue where like something comes up and it's hard not to harp on that? Because you seem like you
There,
still really appreciate the message.
yeah, there are a few things. I was at a service not long ago, and they were talking about, boast. Can't boast in my deeds; you can only boast in the Lord, at which we believe. And they said, I mean, think about all Jesus's brothers, and they didn't boast that, hey, my brother's Jesus, and kind of caught me. I was like, wait a minute,
Mm.
you believe that Jesus had physical brothers? Because we don't.
Yeah.
We say, there were brothers as the same as, hey, brother, I love you, brother, and this and that. But in our faith, we believe that Jesus was an only child, and so there were no brothers. So slight theological things like that, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Jesus is God and he's consubstantial with God and the Holy Spirit,
Hmm.
and he's one with God is God, and that the only way to salvation is through God, through Jesus
Hmm.
Christ. So that doesn't change the goal. I mean, the way I like to say it is we're on the same team.
Hmm.
We just have slightly different rules. If you ever played euchre in Indiana, it's like, what? You're making this stuff up.
Yeah.
They just play their card games are different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe even like when you go from one league of football to the next, I feel like it's really confusing for people if they're watching because I watch a lot of college football and like,
Mhm.
wait, that guy was out, both feet weren't in bounds. He only needs 1 foot in bounds. It's like, what? What do you
Yeah,
mean? They're like,
yeah,
that's college football. That's how it works.
that's right.
Uh, yeah, still football. But anyway, so this is our job fair, the whole church job fair. So before we get to any of the other stuff, um, for people who maybe don't know what you do or don't understand what the job is, you are a strategic account manager. What is that, and how would you address anyone who might be interested in pursuing that kind of career?
So the this is the largest company I've ever worked for. 32 million customers, 100,000 employees. So it's a really big company. But to put it in perspective, AT&T has 250,000 employees, which they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So I'm in the same business as AT&T. I work for Spectrum, and a competitor would be Comcast, but not really because Comcast is a different market. So we don't compete with each other actively, and AT&T is there too. But so what I'm getting at is a lot of sales jobs. You go, you sell, you do this and that. Um, as an account manager, by definition, I work with customers who are already customers. I work with a defined
Hmm.
customer base. And even if I have friends who want me to help them, I can't help them if they don't fit into my defined customer base. And
Mm.
and that's what the strategic part is about is I work with governments and schools. Some of my friends work with hospitals, some work with hotels, some work with
Hmm.
Fortune 500 companies. So they have their own strategic group. So my strategic group is government and education.
Hmm.
And I'm an account manager, meaning I work with existing customers, as opposed to some people on my team who go out and call on new schools, new governments, ones that we're not servicing yet, and they try
Hmm.
to bring them into the company. So it's at the end of the day, it's a sales job, but
Hmm.
I have limitations and I have goals.
So yours is more about satisfaction and retention with current customers. Then is that
Well, that
kind of
and
fun?
growing the base because as
Yeah.
we grow, we're offering more goods and services and have to work with these customers to let them know, hey, we do this too. And we do this really well, and this is what might benefit you.
Oh, okay. Okay. A little bit of upselling. I like it. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
and
Cool. Cool.
when I was in college, I was waiting tables, and someone had a great meal. Would you like to finish off with some cheesecake? You know, you got to
Yeah.
upsell, right?
Yeah, but that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like it's like if I see someone who comes in every day at Chipotle, that's where I work at, and sometimes you're like, yeah, man, have you tried our queso? Sometimes I might even give them a free queso. Maybe next time they'll
Yeah,
start ordering the queso with,
right.
That's what I was
There you
thinking. I
go.
was like, okay, that sounds
Actually, your
familiar.
case was pretty killer, so why not?
I enjoy the queso a lot, but oh man, so what if somebody was like, hey, I kind of want to do account management, office job kind of stuff. That's what they're trying to get into. What would your advice be as far as getting into it?
Goodness sakes. Um, well, a company like this, you would have to have sales experience, so you'd have to be doing something somewhere and show that you can do it. My daughter has a job, and well, both my daughters have jobs, and
Yeah.
her resume was all about, I went to this school, I made these grades, I got these awards, I made these accomplishments, which is great for your first job. But in your
Hmm.
second job, what they want to know is, what'd you do at your first job? School's
Mm.
important a little bit, um, but they want to know, okay, now that you hit the ground running, what have you done? So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to have some sales credentials and having done things. And it wouldn't hurt to try to get on with a bigger company so that you
Hmm.
understand some of the bureaucracy. I mean, when you have
Hmm.
more than 100,000 employees, you got to understand here's HR department and here's what they do. Here's engineering and here's delivery and here's customer service. Because the thing is, I'm not customer service. When a customer has a problem, the customer really needs to talk to tech support or billing support or
Hmm.
some kind of client services. And that's frustrating for me in a way because I've always worked for smaller
Yeah.
companies and I've been able to help my customers everywhere I can. But with billing, I don't have access to the billing records. So how
Hmm.
can I help them with something that I can't see?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
where I compensate for that is I say, call me, let's work together, figure out who you need to talk to. So even if I can't help you, I can help you not spend 4 hours on the phone
Mm.
trying to
Yeah.
find out who to talk to. Let's get you to the correct group the first time.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
adding
I
some
wish more
value
people
that
did
way.
that. Yeah. Yeah. I wish our Wi-Fi people did that here. I've been on the phone with them all day. Oh man. But so what are some things that you would say are normal in your occupation that maybe other people might not think about? So like in the restaurant, you have like the back of house versus the front of house kind of rift. Is
Right.
there anything in account management that's like maybe just stuff that we wouldn't think about?
Gosh, there's a thousand things. Well, the number one issue I face every day, not every day. I've got a lot of customers I've worked with for 10 years. I've had some customers
Hmm.
that I've worked with for 30 years. And they worked with me at different companies I've gone to, and they call me all the time because they know that I've established um, with them that I am here to help. Let's try to make this work. How can we make your life better?
Hmm.
And, you know, this is a for profit company, so we're going to make a profit on it. But it's not like we're going to gouge you. We just, we need to be paid for our time because I can't hire engineers to help out if I
Yeah.
can't pay the engineers. And if I can't pay the engineers, they're going to go to someplace else that will pay them, and we're left hanging. So I guess what I'm trying to say is uh, w- one of the bigger frustrations is that people don't know you're their partner because really we're here to partner.
Yeah.
Now, does everything work out? No. Sometimes it's not a good fit. Sometimes
Yeah.
you like this service of ours, but that service doesn't make any sense. But we can at
Hmm.
least talk about it and see if we can move forward and if it makes sense to go on like that. So that's the other side that really most people don't know about is the backside.
Hmm.
When I work in restaurants, hey, we want to sell all the salmon, we want to sell all the snapper, and then we 86 it. Like, well, crap,
Hmm.
I just told this table how great our snapper is, and you've 86'd it, and there's none to be sold. So, it's communication with the back end.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of things too on the back end too that we'll never see. In a restaurant,
Yeah.
if you've got a table of 8 people, you want 8 entrees to come out at the same time.
Yeah, that's rough.
So if you bring out one, what do? Sit there and wait till it's cold and be polite and have a horrible experience, or do they eat it while everyone else watches them? That's another horrible experience. There's a lot on the back
Yeah.
end, and so part of it is we, being a waiter or a bartender or whatever you're doing in the front of the house, you can't see what's going on in the back, and you don't know what the problem is. So you have to have some blind faith. So that's where communication helps. You have to say, hey, these people are all at the same table and they want their food at the same time. Or here's an appetizer. Someone's going to eat their appetizer as their main course. So this appetizer doesn't come out first. It needs to come out with all the other entrees. How is a cook going to know unless you tell them to communicate with them?
Yeah.
And so we have the same thing going on here in my industry. When people are making changes or they're going to do an upgrade or going to add a service or maybe discontinue a service, if you cut off their internet because they're going to a faster internet and you cut it off 2 weeks before the new internet comes on board, that's a nightmare. And that means your next 2 weeks are going to be filled with angry phone calls and not able to help other customers because you're having to put out fires. So what you want to do is you want to communicate with the back end. And that's what a lot of people don't get is, and this is one of my real pet peeves, is the people on the back end are not your enemy. They're your teammates, they're your peers, and let's treat them with respect because you can't do your job without them. And they remember that. 10 years later, they remember, hey, that's Jerry. He's not a jerk. He might have screwed up, but he's trying his best, and I'm trying my best too. So that's part of being a Christian and being in a modern workplace where even though things are results driven and numbers driven, you've still got to work with other people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, another thing I want to ask about, because you already mentioned some of the restaurant stuff. So, like at our house, me and my wife both worked in restaurants. So sometimes, Tiffany will be like, oh, hey, you make the bed. I'm just heard. And for us, that's normal. But for other people, it's like, did he just say heard? Why, you mean you're going to do it? Like, what do you, it's like, oh, that's what you say in a restaurant. And I know, even today, if I see some pictures that are really overexposed or really red from my time working at Shutterfly, if I see something that looks red tinted, most people are like, oh, well, take the red out. My first thought is I look at it and I'm like, oh, you just got to add some green to that.
Exactly.
It's that makes no sense to anybody else.
Yeah.
Is there any language specific stuff from your job that maybe people wouldn't know about, first think about, as far as how you talk?
Everything we do is a 3-letter acronym, a TLA, unless it's a 4-letter acronym. And that's one of my pet peeves. And I like to say that one of my main jobs is interpreting geek speak to plain language so that the finance director, the HR director, the CEO understands what we're trying to do. And one thing is, I'm going to bring up phones because it's one of my favorite peeves. Everyone's used to a phone and everyone's got their cell phone and their landlines and everything. Well, traditional landline is a POTS line, POTS, and POTS is an acronym for plain old telephone service. And I died laughing when I learned that. I'm like, you mean you actually came up with a 4-letter acronym to replace, instead of saying a phone line, it's a POTS line, plain old telephone service? But, and so when we're in a meeting and our engineers say, well, those are POTS lines and we need to go to SIP or VoIP or something like that, everything we have is a 3-letter acronym.
Yeah.
And the best the acronym is Twain compliant. That's from my days back in the computer business. There are many theories what Twain means, but the prevailing theory is Twain stands for technology without an interesting name. But it is a thing. It's
great.
Compliant. It is or it isn't. And so ask your dad. He probably knows about it.
Oh, man. I love that, though. That's so funny. Oh, so... but I just love hearing some of the language stuff, because it's always interesting. People just speak whole other languages at work sometimes, and you just would never know.
Well, and not just that, we change our acronyms. We used to sell FIA, and now it's DFI. But before it was DIA, and then FIA, and then now it's DFI, and it's the exact same product, but there
That's-
is logic why the name changed, and I'm not going to bore you with it, and it makes perfect sense, and it's what we're using nowadays. But over 20, 30 years, products change and evolve, and DFI is a more accurate, more complete description of the product one of the products that we're selling.
All right. I dig it.
And again,
I'm going to have to use Twain at some point, though. I'm going to have to find an
Yeah.
excuse to.
That's right.
Oh, man. So, for part of the chunk of these episodes, what we really wanted to do. So I mentioned earlier, we asked our Facebook group, what are the things you hear when you're at seminary, when you're at your churches, that are being argued about by our pastors, our theologians, our professors, podcast even. And we wanted them to come up with 12. So we gave them a bunch of stuff on Facebook. The top 12 we're putting up on here of what they think people are talking about to see whether or not these topics are actually relevant to everyday life. So I'm going to run through these 12. And for each one, I just need you to tell me if you find it somewhat relevant, not relevant, really relevant, or you could say, I've never heard of it, which would be an even more interesting answer, honestly.
Okay.
All right. So if you're okay, then I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one here. Whew. All right. Uncle Jerry, let me know what's relevant. Soteriology, the nature of what it means to be saved.
That topic doesn't come up very often in my church.
All right. Free will versus predestination.
That's what we studied in theology class.
Mm-hmm.
And my nephew is studying it in theology class, and has never been discussed since.
All right. Atonement models.
Atonement models. You'll have to just.
Never heard of it works. I think that's a fine one.
Well, no. See, I mean, if you're going to atone for your sins, you're going to understand the word, understand the concept. We have confession with the priests, and we don't do burnt offerings. So I guess I don't understand the framework of how you mean.
Atonement models refers to the different models people believe in of how Jesus atoned for sins, whether it was by his death, his resurrection, by beating up sin. Christ is victorious is one for some reason. There's a lot of interesting, weird theories on how it actually works.
That exact phrase has never come across my desk. So
that's great to know. All right. Continuationism versus cessationism when it comes to like the gifts of the Spirit, speaking in tongues, that kind of stuff.
Say that again, please. Continuation.
It's continuationism versus cessationism. The argument of whether like the gifts of the Spirit, speaking in tongues, still exist today or not.
I'm failing this test.
That is not a test. It's it's helpful for us to know what people are actually what's actually useful to think about.
I have some friends that are in the men's group with me, and they can go toe to toe on theology and all the what do you call it? I've forgotten the word.
Doctrinal.
Well, I mean, there's a doctrine, and there's the different scriptures.
Creed?
Not scriptures.
Yeah, I can't right now either.
Gosh, it'll come back to me.
That's okay. We'll go to the next one.
Yeah.
Christology, just the study of Christ.
The study of Christ, Christology.
Yeah.
That's not a word that we use very often.
All right. Is God's nature relevant to your regular life?
Is God's nature
Or character? Okay. What about social justice?
Social justice is brought up a lot. And traditionally, the Catholic Church has been very liberal I mean, that's why we invented the university system. And you look at all the Catholic hospitals and all the orphanages and all the things that we've done. And when I was a child, you would say that to be Catholic, you had to be a Democrat. When all that changed was abortion. Um, abortion is a now, I know Catholics that don't have a problem with abortion, but the official church position is no abortion. You also can't, death row. You can't kill people.
Yeah. Not to harp on it, since I know we're just running through these really quick, but yeah, I think it's one of the interesting things is how often people are like, well, Christians are, if they're against abortion, why aren't they against death row? And, my thing, it's always been interesting because I'm like, well, Catholics are against both.
So,
but there is a lot of inconsistency.
And I know we're going through this list, but I mean, the thing is that you see some things in the news, and as a human, as a father, and I imagine if these things happen to my family, my daughters, my sisters, whatever happened, you just think, that putting them to death would be the best thing. But as a Christian, the church's position is this: Jesus is more interested in your future than your past. And if you take someone's life, you rob them of the opportunity for salvation. So maybe they're never going to be saved. But what if they got saved? What if they're going to get saved next year, but you took their life this year? So now they're going to burn in hell because they never had the chance to recognize Jesus. And so that's why we have to be against it.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to put social justice really relevant then. All right. Next, the doctrine of Imago Dei, being made in the image of God. Is that relevant to your life?
Not speaking for the church, speaking for me personally, when I was at a non-Catholic mass or service the other day, they sang a popular song. They talked about, something like, I want to be like Jesus, or I'm going to be just like Jesus. And I had to think back to the Bible. It said, being like Jesus is nothing we should ever strive for. I mean, it shouldn't be possible. We're not saved by being like Jesus. We're saved because of Jesus and our belief in Jesus. And I kind of think it's heresy to say I'm going to be like Jesus, because that's not what we're called to do. Now, if we accept Jesus, then we're going to want to be a better person. And if we're a better person, we treat other people better, we treat ourselves better, we have a better attitude. But how are we going to be like Jesus? That just kind of weirds me out. But again, I'm not speaking for the Catholic Church. I'm speaking as Joe Schmo, who is one of 8 billion Catholics. So take my opinion with a grain of salt.
So is that created in the image of God not relevant? Is that?
Well, I think that we are created in the image of God. Because the Bible tells us that we are. But I don't
what that
think
means is
that trying to be like God is even
something
on
different.
the list.
Okay. All right. Next one is the nature of Scripture, or what is Scripture? Is that relevant to you or not relevant? Very relevant.
Yeah. So again, that's just the very Protestant thing to ask. Sola Scriptura. We can go into that, whether that's right or not, or we read the Bible, we believe the Bible. If you understand the Catholic Mass, you understand that everything is biblically based, and we could really get down to the nitty-gritty, but that would bore you. So the Scripture is very important, but there's also, in our faith, there's the tradition, and we believe that the apostles and the Pope, that St. Peter was the first Pope. And so part of this is a relationship, because in assembling the Bible, there are a lot of really good texts that didn't make the cut. It's not that they were wrong. They weren't, it wasn't heresy, It's just they didn't make the cut. And so there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So relevant. Then ecclesiology and missiology. So that's just what it means to be the church and like the theology of what the church does out in the world. Does that relevant to you? Not relevant? Somewhat relevant? Where are you putting that one?
It probably should be more relevant, but I mean, it really
Somewhat.
should be. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the thing is, as much as reading the Bible every day and trying to be a good Christian and practicing our faith, we've also got a mortgage and car
Yeah.
payments and a job, and hopefully I'll retire in a few years and I can focus on that, which is a horrible thing to say because we need to be focusing on that now because we never know the day, the date, the hour. We don't know.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared.
Definitely. All right. Well, that might get us into the last two for you here then. The study of angels or the study of demons, is that relevant to your life in the least?
The study of them is not relevant to my life, but the belief in them is.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go and put that at somewhat relevant then. All right. Last one. Never relevant, somewhat relevant, really relevant. The study of the end times, eschatology.
The end times, yeah.
We might be in them, so.
Yeah, gosh, no one knows the day or the hour, right?
Yeah.
To me, in some ways, the study of the end times, and this is just me personally, this isn't a faith-based thing, it's kind of irrelevant because we don't know when it's coming. We don't know if it's a million years from now. We don't know if it's tomorrow. So we have to be prepared today.
Okay. All right.
And
I dig it.
It's like, I don't know, studying Marvel comics. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feed my family. It doesn't get me into heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how many people would just straight up said that the last two, like the angels, demons, eschatology, they're like, yeah, that stuff's not really relevant. Like everybody just kind of like, that's not relevant. I like your take of like, yeah, but we don't actually know when the end times, like when is the end? So it could be relevant. Could be relevant the next
Right.
second. Yeah. So if you had to pick one of those above 12 that we mentioned to talk just a couple sentences about, a little bit more about, that you thought was relevant, which one would you pick?
Well, I'm going to go off script here and change the subject. And the thing is that
All right.
the things you're asking are, I mean, Judy is studying. Judy. We both know and love Judy, and she's studying theology. So the questions to me are questions that a theologian will ask another theologian, and really deep. And what I'm talking about is the boots on the street, the real people. And one of the biggest things that I have seen in my personal life is people saying, and this is in many religions, I don't get anything out of church service. I don't get anything out of mass. I don't get anything out of this and that. And they might go and they might sing and they might have a good time, or they might go to their service and their kids or grandkids are up on the altar and they're singing and it's entertaining. But I don't get anything out of our church service. To me, is the biggest problem we face today. And the reason why is because we're Americans and we're spoiled and we're used to YouTube and we're used to, Facebook and things and sit back, entertain me. We don't go to church to be entertained. A friend of mine had a new preacher, came from another country, really hard to understand. And he was struggling because he wasn't getting as much out of the service because he didn't understand what the guy was saying. And my point is this: we don't go to church to be entertained. We go to the church for the single reason to give love, honor, worship, glory to Jesus Christ, to God our Savior, and to give praise and thanks. So we don't go to we're not going to be entertained. We're going to give worship, honor, glory. We're not going to we're not going to become entertained. And if you go to service and if you engage the right way, you're going to get a lot more out of it because you're given more. When you're given more, you're getting more. And that to me is the biggest problem today.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like that. Um, I think that does get a little bit into like what it means to be the church. Is like what are we doing? Like, what is the point of this, right?
Mhm.
I guess what's gnawing at me with this series, right, is like you said, those are the things that we're talking about in seminary. You know, Judy's probably studying when she's doing theology, all that kind of stuff. And I know originally, and I think it's probably still part of the idea if you really to press someone on it, is like these things, we're studying them so that we better understand God and then all the stuff so that we can better be the church, not necessarily entertain, but, you know, equip people to talk about God and to understand their faith. And that's supposed to enrich their relationship with God, I guess. But then a lot of it, like when you look at it just face value, you're like, but how is that doing that? You know, we talked about before, you know, in Protestant camps, a lot of people are like, okay, so if we crack the code of Revelation, I'm going to figure out that the Antichrist is really someone in Russia and his name is, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, okay, but like, how does it actually, like, when you go to your job, you're trying to pay your bills,
Mhm.
does that actually make any difference at all? Like, and like you said, like we go to give to God, and I believe, you know, we don't go to give so that we can get anything from God necessarily, but I think that relationship with God matters and it should impact every part of your life, even your work life. So I just feel like that maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect when we're looking at all these kind of things. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
I think that's a good idea. There's a big disconnect in a lot of things we're doing, and a lot of if okay, I mentioned this to your dad 30 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
for most of history, you think about kings. If you were so bold as to look up at a king, you could be beheaded.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh! Oh, it's your cat. Sorry, kind of freaked me out there. Something was coming up behind you, and
She
anyhow,
does that.
we are arrogant Americans living in a technological age,
Mhm.
and our view of Scripture is completely different than it was in 1850, because or 1750, or for most of the history of the world. Um, and I just think that we have to be careful, because I think that we've got a certain arrogance. Um, we
Mhm.
look at you. I'm looking at your house. You've got electric lights. Presumably, you have central air. Obviously, you have an animal. I mean, if you see a microphone beside you, you are. I mean, think about it. 150 years ago, you are more affluent than 99% of the population, and so that arrogance lets us think that we are somehow
Mhm.
important, more important, and we're not. Um,
Mhm.
we're just people. We're here for a short period of time. We're going to go away. But God is eternal. He's beyond time, and I just think that we have to kind of sit back and think. Really, who are we, and our relationship with God. A lot of it has to do with, hey, you're the man. Please don't abandon me, and I believe in you and I love you, and I just think
Yeah.
about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, you keep using the word relationship. I like that a lot. And trying to kind of like tie some of these loose thread ideas together for myself.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the times when we focus so much on theology in the West, especially, I think a lot of it is almost, you know, maybe no one would say it, but I feel like it's almost like that subconscious level of arrogance of like, if I just crack the code and I know
Yeah.
my theology good enough, then
Mhm.
my life's going to be great because I'll have this great relationship with God. But we never think of our other relationships like that, right? Like, I never think like, man, if I just learn the favorite kind of material that Uncle Jerry likes in his t-shirt, then all of a sudden I'm gonna have a great relationship with my uncle and everything's gonna be awesome, right? Like, you don't think, like, I don't think about that like
Yeah.
with my wife. I don't even think about that with my dog. I'm not like, man, if I just study him good enough, I have a great relationship with my pets, right? Like, no one thinks like that. Yeah, it feels like that's what we're treating God like. If we crack the code, all of a sudden the relationship's going to be great. And maybe we just need to have a relationship and not try to, treat it that way. Maybe. I don't know.
Again, the Catholic
Yeah.
Church. So we have the doctors of the church. And most of
Yeah.
those came from the third and fourth century, and understanding, the relationship of God and the church and things like that. And I think that was important. But you had a largely uneducated global population, and I understand the need for theology, and I agree with theology and study and pursuing and trying to understand better. But you just said it yourself. Or well, that's what I understood you to say. This is really about you and God, and because knowing you can know God, you can know all the rules, you can know all the theories. That's not going to get you into heaven. There's only one way to heaven, and that's through Jesus Christ. And
Yeah.
and you can be an idiot and get in heaven.
Yeah.
So if you learn that, that's great. And if you can use that to help draw people closer to God, um, I think that's a worthy cause. But I don't know that knowledge for knowledge's sake is going to help you in the long run. It's not going to help me in the long run. Now,
Mhm.
I'm still going to read because I'm interested. I want to know. I want to know more. I want to know why and how. But
Yeah.
knowing that's not going to get me to heaven.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even tying it back around to like, still got to pay my bills, got to work my job. No amount of theology and even relationship with God is going to change those things. I think theology is kind of your head, but I think a relationship, just like when you're going through a hard time, it's good to have family, friends who are there with you. I feel like it's even better to have God there with you. And if you look through the Bible and you actually read it, you're like, oh well, a lot of these people maybe knew a lot about God and still had some pretty crappy lives, right? Like some terrible things happened to some of the prophets, but God was still with them. So I think maybe that's a good takeaway. Is really learning to focus
I,
on that relationship.
I heard a speaker the other day, and we're getting off the subject a little bit, but he was talking about in Psalms, and I wrote it down. I don't remember which one it is. I don't know, maybe 55, but he was
Mm.
going on. He's like, God, because of my relationship with you, I've lost my wife, I've lost my family, I've lost the farm, I've lost, people hate me, people discourage me, I'm just so angry with you.
Mm.
And, the point of the talk was that this guy was really upset with God, and he said all this to God, and yet it still made the cut. It's in the Bible, which tells you that it is
Yeah.
okay to be angry with God, and things might not go well because of your relationship with God. And I was like, wow, that
Mm.
kind of blew me away because, in our modern world, on TV, you hear the gospel of prosperity. If you will just send me, $50,
Yeah.
then you're going to get that job you want, and you're going to have that new Mercedes. Um, and it's not that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, good stuff. Well, Uncle Jerry, one thing we're doing for all this series that we're asking everyone, everyone sees the world through different eyes. That's something we believe.
Mhm.
And I mentioned earlier, a lot of our listeners are pastors, people in seminary, that kind of stuff. Is there anything you think that in your work as an account manager that maybe something that you see that our pastors, church leaders, and theologians might not be able to see for themselves that they'd benefit from learning from?
Hmm. Well, I don't know that it's anything that not everyone sees. I just think that um, the something that you learn is that people aren't always honest, taking things at face value. Sometimes might not be good, but I can't live my life being cynical. Um, I like to think that I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I do my best. And I'm going to be honest with people, and I like to think they're the same. And I get burnt sometimes, but most of the time I don't. Um, most of the
Mm.
time I end up finding good people. I find difficult people sometimes are difficult because of things that they've experienced before, real things, maybe not real to you or me, but real to them. And if we can find a way to connect, um, you know, we can develop great relationships, and and then also knowing that there are a few of those people who just aren't going to like you no matter what you do, and can't ever be trusted. But you know what?
Yeah.
Don't always have to work with those people. You can
Yeah.
say no, thank you.
Yeah. Wipe the dust from your feet, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. Well, we're getting near the end here, and we always like to give people something tangible at the end of our episodes, something practical they can do. So we just kind of wanted to ask everybody if someone in the church or the church themselves were listening to this and they were thinking about like what could they do to help benefit or to just be there for someone who is in your job. So like if someone in the church is like, man, I just want to do something for a strategic account manager that's in our church. What's the most helpful thing that maybe they could do for them?
Um, for me, just let's talk. Let's sit down and talk. I'm not talking about business. I'm talking about let's just talk. Let's have let's find new enkindle new friendships and grow and become better people. And because this your job's stressful, but at some point your job ends and you need people. And yeah, I'm just always looking to meet new people.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I like it. Well, what if everybody did that? If everybody just took the time to have conversations, to not about work or maybe not even about ministry, just to talk and to be there with each other. What do you think we might see change in the world around us if people started doing that more?
I think, I think the world could be a lot better place.
Yeah, probably. I like to think so.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, with that, we do end our show with what we call our God Moment segment, where we just share somewhere we've seen God recently in our own lives. Mine's really easy this week. My dog, Copper, who, he's been through a lot. We've talked about on the show before. He, yesterday, the day of recording this, got his muzzle off. And, man, I took him on. I was just happy to see his face. Something about just seeing his face without that thing. You're like, oh, this is great. I took him on a walk, and he sniffed everything. He was just shoving his face up on stuff because, like, he was just so happy to like act like a hound dog again. And I'm like, I don't know, did my heart good. And just seeing God in little things like that, I guess.
Good. Good.
Yeah, Uncle Jerry, what about you? Where have you seen God recently?
I've seen God recently. My goodness. I see God everywhere. I was at a men's conference at church, and I saw some friends who I hadn't seen in a while, and I saw God in them. I saw God. Well, I spent some time with Lily this weekend, Judy's daughter, and my gosh, what a refreshing child.
Oh, yeah.
Just restores your faith, and just the whole world is new and the whole world's exciting, and I saw God in her.
Yeah, man. Yeah, life just gets crazy the older you get, and you get so busy. And I feel like one of the first times I've really got to spend time with Lily was at Rachel's wedding last year. And I'm like, she really is. She's such a delight. And sometimes just children exemplify God more than anything, I think. Not because of theology, just kind of like a yeah, it's great. It's great. But well, thank you so much, Uncle Jerry, for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun and very enlightening. So I thank you for all of that and just for agreeing to talk with me. Trying to remember how to do TJ's part. He wants everybody to share this episode with a friend, an enemy, or a cousin. I have at least 2 cousins who are Jerry's daughters. I'll just share it with both of them. That's my job. I don't know what you guys are going to do, but thank you all for listening. If you want, you can subscribe to our show, Captivate, Apple Podcasts, or Patreon. You get some extra content on there occasionally. We've not been great at that lately because I've been busy moving, but we do update it sometimes. And also want to tell you guys to take the chance, if you get it, to check out the other shows on the Anazal Podcast Network. I mentioned that earlier. Kung Fu Pizza Parties over there, so that's a lot of fun. My Seminary Life. Let Nothing Move You. It's a Bible podcast if you like the Bible. So maybe that's a good one to check out. We hope you all enjoyed the show. Next week, we're going to be joined by Kristen Tideman, co-owner of Tidy Studios. She's going to be joining us to talk about her job and how her faith tradition impacts her daily life as an event planner, as well as a producer. Then we will be interviewing Officer Thurman about how his faith impacts his life as a police officer in South Carolina. And after that, someone with the last name Blackwell, not sure who, is hopefully going to be joining us to talk about how their life impacts, how their faith impacts their life as a welder. Yeah, TJ's family's largely welders. So someone from TJ's family is going to be on too, guys. And finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be on, perhaps. He doesn't know about it, so someone has to tell him, sign a petition, send him a letter, something. You know, we got to keep doing the bit, so that's where we're at, doing the bit. And thank you all again for listening. Until next time.